Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Pereira. Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Monday launched a 16,320 crore rupees scheme to supply electricity to all households by December 2018, providing free connections to the poor and at a very low cost to others. The Pradhan Mantri Sahaj Bijli Har Ghar Yojana, named Saubhagya, aims to improve the environment, public health, education and connectivity with the help of last-mile power connections across India. It will help reduce the use of kerosene lamps in non-electrified households. The Prime Minister said that the scheme would bring monumental change in the lives of the poor, and this was possible after 3 years of reforms in the power sector. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze the challenges of the newly launched scheme. Joining me on the program today are Anil, Razdan, former Secretary, Ministry of Power; Himangshu, Senior Editor of the Economic Times; and Singh, former Chairman, Power Grid Corporation. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Mr. Razdan, I'd like to begin with you. What do you think of the newly launched Saubhagya scheme?
I think it's a very appropriate launch. The nation has been living with the shame for too many decades. Almost a decade or more than a decade back, we decided to take electricity to every village and to most homes there. But there were a few problem villages where at that point of time we would have liked to take renewable energy, but the cost of renewable energy was too high. And so those villages rightly were objecting to use of renewable energy because it would have been unaffordable unless the states were going to subsidize it. However, now with the renewable prices having come down and the states, and generally in the country we have surplus power, at least about 60 to 62% is the PLF of the thermal power stations. So it is the right stage to see that electricity reaches every home. We want homes to be cleaner, and in my view, it may not be possible to take a gas connection to every home, but we've got to clean up the kitchens with cleaner cooking fuels, provide lighting, and also provide electricity for maybe small industry and artisans to be working closer to their own homes. However, the biggest challenge now is for the distribution companies, because that is the weakest link of our electricity chain, starting from generation, transmission, distribution, and I would ultimately say consumer. The distribution companies have not been performing well. They're largely state-held monopolies, and I would say that the consumer has no choice but to go to one supplier. Maybe the time has come now also to start working towards separation of carrier and content,
Right.
so that the non-performers get pushed by the side. The other side is that any system can only function in a sustainable manner if the money that is invested in the system gets back. And that can only come back from the distribution end. And if the transmission and distribution losses, or the AT&C losses today, which include commercial losses, are not improved drastically, this will be an ever-losing proposition. There are two ways of going about it.
Right.
One is that you make stricter laws. The other is that you improve your technology. I would opt for improving technology and not making stricter laws, because stricter laws can only be misused.
Okay. Fair enough. I think you summed
And
it
here
up.
I would say that the example of the telecom sector, is the right example.
Okay, fair enough. I'm going to. I think you summed it up very well for us, as far as what the Saubhagya scheme is all about and what some of the biggest challenges could possibly be. Himangshu, there have been several schemes that have been popular, that have been successful as far as this current establishment is concerned. For instance, the Ujjwala Yojana. Do you believe that the Saubhagya scheme will be on the same lines as the Ujjwala scheme, or will it be different?
I think there's sufficient ground for us to believe that this scheme should be successful, because, increasingly it's becoming, it's a kind of an anachronism that in this day and age, when you're talking of launching rockets and, doing all kinds of things, emerging as a global superpower, so many people of a country are living in the dark ages, literally. And, this is completely unacceptable. There were attempts, as Mr. Razdan just said, more than 10 years ago, but that time it was not so viable because of challenges in renewable energy. And I would also reiterate another point he made, that these distribution companies, you need to take them head on. They are holding the entire population at ransom just because somebody somewhere in a discom wants to make money or has got appointed because of certain connections and is incompetent. You have entire towns in the darkness for 6 to 8 hours. This is just not acceptable. So any scheme that addresses that, and I'm very glad that the Power Minister yesterday actually told a reporter that, this is there, but the next target is to end load shedding, give 24/7 power. That's the direction we have to move in. And I think India as a whole is getting less and less tolerant of nonsense.
Okay.
Like the kind of power situation you have in many parts of the country. Even in, Delhi is improved a lot, but you just step out into Noida, Gurgaon, other places. Things are better than the past, but you actually have, you can't imagine a house that does not have a standby generation or an inverter.
True.
That should not be the case.
That should not be the case in 2017.
Yeah. So this scheme is, more than welcome. And I see a fair amount of determination from my interaction with people in the government. Of course, this will have a lot of dividend in terms of people's goodwill. Because this is one thing where you can directly touch the life of a person.
True.
You think of a remote area. Certain things which even officials and government have not talked about. There are villages around, say, wildlife sanctuaries and parks. They are living in terror that, some wild animal predator might come at night. And they actually say, can somebody, put a street lamp for us?
Sure.
And if you can provide that, you can...
Their lives will be far better.
Yeah, and you will protect wildlife.
True.
Okay, and then if you actually provide legal connection to every house, this whole business of illegal connection and so-called distribution transmission losses, I mean, the non-technical part of it, you will be able to tackle that also, because, many people would be happy to take the connection, and the fact that they will be given the connection free. Free means the actual connecting part.
True.
The rest, there's no subsidy.
Yeah.
And for others, 500 rupees in 10 equal installments. So I think many people will go for it.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
Mr. Singh, how is the Saubhagya scheme going to be different from, say, some of the older schemes like Uday or Ujala?
See, let me tell you, I come from a village. I still maintain connections with the village. 69% of the people still live in villages. They are migrating to cities. For what? Glitter and glamour of the city. Electricity has been perceived so far as a city or town centric. This government has voted, and especially I heard the Prime Minister and Power Minister also 2-3 days before, and Prime Minister yesterday. Saubhagya is a welcome that, yes, look here, we are trying to move from city town centric to villages, and it is our aim to provide electricity to all. Now, in a global world today, a villager expects the same thing, what is happening in USA or what is happening in Delhi or what is happening in Frankfurt. So their aspirations are high. And the primary input is electricity, which will necessarily improve other infrastructure, education, health, etc., etc. Now, Mr. Razdan talked about non-conventional energy. Solar is going to change the complete platform of electricity sector. Then what is that we have to do in solar? We talked in the beginning, when we started with solar, about solar parks and then green corridor. I had been at the helm of affairs in Power Grid for 12 years. I worked before that in NTPC, before that in Tata. I know the total game of power sector. There are two factors which are responsible for the mess. Let me tell you. One is gaming at the highest echelon, including the businessmen, politicians, bureaucrats, and so-called we engineers. We are also equally responsible, as is responsible villagers whom we blame that they don't pay. When do we supply electricity to them? When it is not needed. When it is needed, it is not supplied. Therefore, what is the solution? Solution is the solar energy, wind energy and biomass. After all, India is an agrarian society. India cannot sustain itself unless villagers develop themselves and they retain themselves in villages. We provide them all the facilities in villages itself. So what is needed? Along with smart cities and towns, India needs a smart village. That can be done through decentralized generation, not centralization. The glamour of announcing big projects and failing, we must deviate in power sector. Go for decentralized generation. We doesn't need big transmission line, big distribution line.
Right.
So your worry of setting up these projects, fund, project management, failures, and all kind of mismanagement, this is eliminated. So therefore, you can set up 1 megawatt, 2 megawatt, 3 megawatt projects in villages, and develop along with this dairy, food processing, storage, local market.
Sure.
And from the local market, what government has to do, ensure that the products are picked up. So all middlemen are eliminated, and then this will be seen by the villagers and the people. I mean, most of the people in India that look here is a government, here is a scheme which is meant for the people.
Sure.
And make the people as a partner, true partner. What we had been advocating, PPP,
Right.
public-private partnership. Let me take another 1 minute. I have studied it extensively. Solar plants can be set at an elevated height, 3 meter, 3.5 meter height. Then land acquisition becomes totally avoided. And the people over whose land these solar plants are being built, make them a partner. So villagers will become a partner. You can have every village or big villages, there are good schools, even colleges. So skill development will come. Local job creation will be done because of cold storage, food processing, market mechanism, education. And then above all, I like to stop here, above all, this housing. Housing is much needed in villages.
Right.
Building houses for everyone coming to Delhi or Mumbai or Calcutta is a costly affair.
Sure.
So therefore, decentralized generation and going from the glamour of supplying power from top down.
Sure.
I was one who was responsible for building the national grid,
Right.
which is a success story.
Sure.
We have now to think power sector grow from bottom to up rather than top down. We have to go for a bottom up.
Fair enough. Some very valid points that are raised by you, and looking forward as to what needs to be done as far as electrification is concerned. But taking the debate forward, Mr. Razdan, timeline has been set for December 2018. Is this a realistic timeline to implement the scheme completely?
Well, I think it's a pretty tough challenge for the distribution sector, because the implementation now has to be virtually done at the distribution level. It will all depend on their level of preparedness to have assessed the area, assessed its needs, what kind of supply source is needed, how will they ensure 24/7. As I said in some other program, that taking the wires or the connectivity to one place or arranging a local source is one part. But the real challenge lies in making it sustainable, that is, provide 24-hour power supply. It's not only 24/7, it has to be 24 into 365. Then you ensure that the money which is invested in the system comes back. Now, Mr. Singh was talking about village level institutions. I mean, yes, the United States tried these electricity cooperatives many years back. We attempted to do so, I think, rather unsuccessfully. And in rural electrification, we had to give up. But today, of course, with the affordable renewables coming in, it has become a reality. But the cost of renewables, when we are talking of solar or wind or small hydro, also has to include storage or any other means of balancing power, that either you're able to segregate the solar and the wind generation or any other source in such a way, maybe local agro products, in such a way that you have a 24-hour supply. But that will be a bit of a challenge as I see technologically.
Sure.
But what I am talking about is that we need to revolutionize the collection of dues at the distribution end and technology. We need to go in for prepaid metering, learn from the telecom sector how they've been able to penetrate the poorest of the poor, and there are no great issues of collection because each person seeing what subsidy must come from direct benefit transfer is to come, what he can afford for himself or herself, then decide how much electricity is going to purchase or what coupons is going to do. Moment that coupon or that payment finishes, the supply has to get disconnected. And I think this will remove a lot of discord even if you change the mode of ownership of supply. But I think the present large monoliths of supplying power across swaths of territory is something that is not going to succeed. We've got to decentralize it or bring about technology in such a way that it becomes doable. Okay,
fair enough. You know, Himangshu, as far as the benefits of the Saubhagya scheme are concerned, obviously it's last mile, electrification. But does it also bring other tertiary benefits along with it? For instance, job creation has been a major problem as far as this government is concerned. Can that problem be addressed through the scheme?
It certainly can be. I mean, if you look at other spin-offs, other benefits, one is, you're talking of digital governance and telecommunication. The moment you have electricity, after that you can have a transmission tower, you can have people with telephone, you're talking of digital payments. You can't do it where there's no mobile network, you don't have a mobile network because there's no electricity. The demand is not enough to justify a generator next to a tower. You can have ATMs more easily. And many of the very poor rural areas are also beautiful areas. There's enormous scope for tourism. Today city dwellers are running to the hills, running to open spaces. Now, the moment villages have electricity, I think tourism can grow. They can, have better access to cold storage, maybe not at the grand, heavy investment scale, maybe at a smaller level. I'm sure there will be technologies available. So, electricity is really the starting point. There were concerns that digital India is leaving behind rural India. I think that gap can be bridged very easily. Today, you get telecommunication services at throwaway prices. You already have a network giving free voice.
Yeah.
You have data which even city dwellers are not able to consume, the amount of data that they get in their packages. Now, the moment you connect rural areas with that, there would be many challenges, there will be many problems like our distinguished panelists have highlighted. There are problems with the SEBs, whatever. But once you take electricity there and you generate a demand, when people get used to it, if they're ready to, take a prepaid connection, then they are going to demand. See, right now they are living in darkness for generations, and they don't even know there can be life with electricity there. They only think you have to shift to a slum in Delhi or New Delhi to get to see electricity.
Right.
So once that changes, I think if this scheme is implemented effectively, it can transform India.
It can transform India, yes, true. Mr. Singh, as far as last mile electrification is concerned, the present technology, equipment that we have, can it provide for it, or do we need some new technology to ensure that the last mile electrification process is completed?
Let me tell you, technology is not a solution. It is a tool to reach a solution. So we have to first create and clean our mindset that electricity is not a fiefdom of the people living in big cities and towns. That government has decided through Saubhagya that will provide electricity to every village. Technology is there and enough technology is there. Its implementation is important. Look at projects, hydro projects. Somehow we have, jokingly I tell, that we have graduated how not to build hydro projects. 30 years, 35 years we have taken time. Nuclear power project, you have seen how to. Thermal power project, we have done excellent job. Transmission, we have done job. There are problems. But the first thing is, project must be executed in time. And these projects should be seen that these are people's projects. How Bhakra Nangal was built, how DVC was built. These were seen as people supported in all respect. They paid, land acquisition was not a problem, forest clearance was not a problem. But today, that perception is not there. People think that the power is generated in Singrauli, in Madhya Pradesh, will go to Delhi, or Farakka is generated, it will go to Calcutta, or it will go to Madras. That is what I said. With advent of non-conventional energy, which is proving to be cheaper, today at what cost Delhi receives power? Huge cost, 7 rupees, 8 rupees, 9 rupees. There are slabs. Now in villages, if you go and ask people, they will not be able to pay.
True.
They don't have clothes to wear. They don't have shelter. What are they going to do? Therefore, what I am advocating, go for decentralized generation. You don't need T&D cost. So cost is straightway eliminated.
Sure.
Loss it 11%, 12%, 13% are gone. Let it be run on a cooperative basis. I do not know about USA. I have read it. It may not have been a successful story because that much population is not central in USA as in India. It is decentralized with long transmission and distribution line compared to Indian conditions if you compare. Here, people want electricity.
Sure.
They want to live in villages, clean villages. I live in Basant Bihar. I always tell my friends that we are living on a sitting volcano, surrounded about Jhuggi Jhopri. They have worse life situation.
Sure.
As for a person who lives in villages. So therefore, we have to make non-conventional energy decentralization project coupled with food storage, fishery. Our water is a serious issue.
Right.
All tanks and bunds, etc., have been filled and all.
So a multi-pronged approach is what we require.
Exactly. And it is achievable. Let me tell you.
It is achievable.
Whatever we decide, we have done. I remember a project, Talcher to Kolar, was being built, HVDC. Honorable Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee called me and he said, Mr. Singh, it has to complete it well in time. I said, we will complete it 1 year before time. We completed 9 months ahead of schedule and saved 900 crores. If that kind of gigantic projects can be done, why these small decentralized
This is a simple task then at the
Very
end of the
simple.
Okay, fair enough. I've got limited time on the program, so I'd like to quickly squeeze in as many closing comments as I possibly can. Mr. Razdan, even the Saubhagya scheme, however, does not talk about 24/7 24/7 electricity as such. It talks about how it can be done in the next phase. So aren't we giving too much importance to 24/7 electricity in the process?
No, I think the point has to be understood at the very beginning that today you are power surplus. At least that's what you are complaining. There are a lot of projects waiting for power offtake, which are yet to be commissioned or have been commissioned. That I think we should get out of our minds. Electricity, the Homi Bhabha had said the most expensive electricity is when there is no electricity. So we should provide electricity when we have the capability to do it. It's a crime not to do it. But the other part is that while it is the responsibility of the government to take this facility to the consumer, we must recognize it's a commercial commodity and it has to be paid for. And I think we have to devise a methodology which stops the notion that electricity is free. I come from a state which was claimed to have been electrified long time back. But still there are pockets where there's very erratic supply.
Right.
And I think that kind of situation has to finish. Electricity is not free. It has to be paid for. Government can build a college or a school or something, but ultimately you've got to go there and make the best use of it. That kind of situation.
Okay, fair enough.
So I think if these 2-3 things are taken in mind, and third, I would say use technology and don't use laws and stricter laws and
Fair enough. Okay, I'm completely out of time on the program today, so I'd like to thank all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. Anil, Razdan, Himangshu, RP Singh, thank you gentlemen for being with me on The Big Picture today. That's all the time we have today. See you again next time.